Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video, as Tory MPs wait to see which raving lunatic the members suggest should lead them for the next few years, it's time to talk about how the embarrassing mess of James Cleverly's dismissal from the contest could work out to be a useful insurance policy for the Conservatives against, for example, the return of the clown prince of scandals, Boris Johnson. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, first of all, for those who haven't been following the Conservative election process closely, James Cleverly had somehow made himself the favourite to win the leadership after a strong performance at the party conference, while his rivals all stank the place out. But then defeat was snatched from the jaws of victory as quite a few of his supporters in Parliament went a bit too far in tactically voting for someone else, only to see Cleverly knocked out. It was an embarrassing act of stupidity, but not quite as much on Cleverly's part as I first imagined. I probably owe him an apology, because numerous reports have suggested that James Cleverly actually urged his supporters not to try to be too clever with tactical voting, just vote for the candidate they wanted to win and not risk it all. So to be fair to Jimmy Dimley, he wasn't that dim on this occasion. That being said, with the support he had, he should have been able to arrange a tactical vote without risking his own place in the final. So it was still a case of poor organisation on his team's part. But although quite a few Conservative MPs are, shall we say, distraught at this turn of events, there's quite a few centre-right Conservatives saying they're not going to vote in the leadership contest at all. You know, and the MPs who did vote tactically, they're going to feel pretty bad, and I imagine not breathe a word about this in public. You know, the cock-up, however, does have a silver lining. James Cleverly can now be seen as the leader who should have been, but cruel or maybe stupid misfortune blocked him and denied the party. But many Tories think that the next leader is doomed anyway. Not just to lose the election, probably not even to make it to the next election. Like, the problem for the Conservatives is you think about the major factors which cost them the election: dodgy behaviour and a failure to deliver basic competence. They're not easy to rectify in opposition. Like, okay, it's fairly straightforward to be not quite as corrupt when you don't have the power to return favours, although Jenrick is doing his best with his extremely shady donations. And it's pretty much impossible to prove your competence at delivery from the opposition benches, where you don't basically do anything. Now, over time, yes, the Conservatives will restore their reputation with different people at the helm, but in the short term, it's all but impossible. And we've seen this in recent polling. Now, there isn't a lot of polling going on right now because it's not really worth it for many people to commission them. And not all pollsters are all that good. So when you have fewer polls, you know, the ones that are not as good might become more prominent. But the details don't matter. The trends are probably not far off. And those trends are of Labour having lost some public support over the past couple of months, which is hardly surprising with their focus on the pain to come rather than the benefits to come later on. But polls show that the main beneficiary has not been the Conservatives, it's been Reform UK. It's not been the Lib Dems either, come to think of it. And this is to be expected. The Lib Dems are basically non-existent as far as the media is concerned, and the Conservatives are still the party that wrecked the economy, public services and people's living standards. The idea that the next Conservative leader can win back the public only by attacking Labour, that is for the birds. Because all they'll be doing is doing Reform UK's work for it if they don't tackle them, who will say that both main parties have failed. And if Nigel Farage isn't going to be invited to rub shoulders with the orange one in America, as I discussed yesterday, then that gives him more time to press Reform's advantage in the UK. Ahead of the election, there was the genuine prospect for Reform to poll ahead of the Tories. I think it did happen in a couple of polls, but it wasn't consistent. Now, there was no way that Reform would win more votes than the Tories in the election itself. I mean, when it comes time to vote, most people are pragmatic and they want to make a difference with that vote. But the potential for Reform to poll higher than the Tories was there. And it still is. In fact, the further away from the election you are, the less pragmatically people say they will vote. You know, in a voting intention poll, when the election is imminent, people are very much focused on who they're going to vote for in practice. So a voting intention poll tends to be a much closer reflection of how people will actually vote. But years before an election, they're more likely to put down just which party most appeals. And I don't know that it's likely. But what I would say is if at some point in the next few years, Reform UK poll ahead of the Conservatives, at or ahead of the Conservatives, consistently across multiple pollsters, I would not be at all surprised. You know, this would just be one of the potential circumstances, of course, under which the new Tory leader would find their position under serious threat. And this outcome now seems more likely, given that the next leader is given the strongest possible impression that they want to drag the party further to the right, although I will say Badenoch seems to be the most flexible when it comes to actual policies. There is every chance that there is another leadership contest in about 2, maybe 3 years' time. And according to those who've read Boris Johnson's new book, which Larry the cat seems to think would make good kitty litter, he is giving every impression that he wants to swan about, making a few £1 million more in the next couple of years, and then will make himself available to return to lead the Tories to victory once more. The second coming of Boris Johnson. You know, he still has supporters amongst the membership who think he has like magical election winning powers and fails to understand that scandals never end with him. You know, one recent attempt to escape his past was trying to justify the £200,000 he accepted in donations, gifts, freebies, to refurbish his Downing Street flat. He said, oh, I had to do this because it looked like a crack den when I came in. It's like, now, I don't have a lot of experience of crack dens. Clearly, Boris Johnson does, right? But I'm pretty sure that they don't look like a John Lewis living room, which is actually what he moved into, left by Theresa May. Basically, Boris Johnson is struggling to justify his past and will continue to do so. And if he did return, well, there'll be way more new scandals spawned by his mere presence, even in opposition. So although there is a certain amount of support for Johnson within the Conservative Party, including in the Parliamentary Party, there is also very likely to be strong opposition to his return. But how would you stop it? Let's be honest, the next leader is unlikely to help develop any future talent. I could be wrong, but it doesn't sound to me like either Jenrick or Badenoch have the sort of personalities that would encourage young blood. I think it more likely they'll behave more like Johnson or Truss and pack their cabinet or shadow cabinet with people who won't challenge them. They do not want to promote the next Rishi Sunak. So if we work on the assumption that no rising stars within the Parliamentary Party who can have that detachment from the Tory government years are allowed to rise, and that the next leader, be it Jenrick or Badenoch, fails badly, then where will the party turn? Well, they now have the option of saying, oh, James Cleverly should have replaced Sunak. It was only a spectacular cock-up which prevented it. Now is the chance to correct that error. As long as Cleverly plays a careful game and is not implicated in the downfall of or the failure of the next leader, which despite his many drawbacks, I think he is politically aware enough to understand that, then he could emerge as a sort of chosen one. You know, it would head off the idea of bringing back Boris Johnson, because that would be tricky. Because for a start, you would need to arrange a safe by-election for him to return to Parliament. And the leader he's looking to depose would have to allow it. And if you think to yourself, well, that doesn't sound too tricky, I would consider the next leader will only be brought down if the party's polling is back in the gutter. In a situation like that, you wouldn't be too confident of the Tories winning a by-election anywhere. So it's something you would only try if you were desperate. And as I say, you'd have to have the outgoing leader sort of remaining in place and going along with this as well. James Cleverly arguably gives the Tories a more straightforward, much less messy option, who will definitely take the party in a different direction to what will be at the time the failed Jenrick or Badenoch project. Cleverly's supporters may have actually inadvertently given themselves a long game insurance here. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.